Hello and welcome. Tonight, 26 years after, federal government considers state pardon for Ken Saro-Wiwa and others as Ogoni leaders visit the president at the villa. Attorney General of the Federation accuses leaders of proscribed group IPOB of triggering violence, also hints on alleged sponsors of Kano and Yoruba nation agitator Sunday Igboho. Health crisis looms in Jigawa state with about 500 patients losing their lives to cholera. State government intensifies vaccination drive. And nurses decline to treat police officers shot during Eswatini protests as government bans demonstrations and restricts internet services. Plus we'll have international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Central Bank affirms that Nigerian banks remain strong and resilient despite the impact of COVID-19 and improvement in non-performing loans ratio.
And on sports news tonight, 2022 FIFA World Cup host Qatar showcase newly completed 40,000 capacity Al Thumama Stadium.
And from Abuja, Nigeria may not meet the United Nations targets for zero carbon emission as Minister of State for Environment reveals the country could wait another 40 years.
Over 2 decades after their execution, some sons of Ogoni land, including renowned environmental activist and writer Ken Saro-Wiwa, executed in the peak of the crisis in the Rivers community, are to be considered for state pardon. This is according to the president when he received a delegation of Ogoni leaders at the State House. The Ogoni sons, also known as Ogoni Nine, who opposed the operations of the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Corporation, were executed by hanging under the General Sani Abacha regime in 1995. President Muhammadu Buhari told the Ogoni leaders that in spite of the gravity of the circumstances that led to the death of the prominent Ogoni sons, his administration will lay the foundation for genuine reconciliation by considering a pardon to bring closure. Our State House correspondent Gloria Umezoki reports.
A maze of issues, including huge oil spills in Ogoni land and the East-West Road, informed this visit to the president at the State House.
Senior government officials.
The president first indicates willingness to treat all pending issues, particularly finding closure to the 1995 Ogoni saga, where 9 environmental activists, including Ken Saro-Wiwa among others, popularly known as Ogoni Nine, who opposed the operations of the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Corporation, were executed by the military regime of General Sani Abacha.
We are committed to ensuring clemency and national integration as part of this administration bid to lay the foundation for genuine reconciliation and bring closure to the issues of Ogoni land. The unfortunate incidents of early 1990s leading to the loss of lives of distinguished sons of Ogoni land and the collateral judicial processes are indelible in our memories. Despite the grievous circumstances, the federal government will consider the request for the grant of pardon to finally close the Ogoni saga.
There is also the belief that security challenges coupled with bad practices in the industry have further degraded the environment.
Educate your people that when, say, pipelines and so on were broken, the damage done is more to the people indigenous to the place than to the country.
Chronicling some of the challenges in the region, including degradation of the environment, the president of the Supreme Council of Ogoni Traditional Rulers requests for more intervention. In response, the president further directed the NNPC to engage host communities in its operations.
I know this is a very clear mandate that you gave us to ensure that we're able to bring back peace, prosperity to the Ogoni land, to complete the cleanup to the best possible level that is possible, in line with all the protocols that is established by the United Nations.
To further engender greater reforms within the region, the president also promised the Ogoni leaders that a critical segment of the East-West Road that cuts across the Ogoni land would be completed under the Infrastructure Development Fund. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has indicted the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, of using online Radio Biafra to instigate violence and incite members of IPOB to commit violent attacks against democratic institutions. At a press conference in Abuja, the Minister of Justice further adds that the Presidential Committee found out that after Kanu's arrest, his followers were culpable of some recent attacks in some parts of the country. Mr. Malami said that the major sponsor of the Yoruba Nation agitator, Sunday Igboho, was a member of the National Assembly, but was silent on the identity of the sponsor.
It's a press conference by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, to give a report on investigations by the ad hoc committee set up by the President into the activities of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, after the rearrest of its leader, Nnamdi Kanu, in June 2021. Giving details, the minister explains that the outcome of the investigations revealed that the IPOB and the Eastern Security Network, ESN, have so far killed 175 security personnel, comprising 128 policemen, 37 military personnel, and 10 other security operatives. He alleged that some countries are aiding Kanu.
We also established that Kanu is not alone in his subversive activities. He has accomplices in Nigeria and abroad, individuals and groups as well as state and non-state actors who are aiding and facilitating his campaign against the people and state of Nigeria. Some of the state actors aided Kanu even as a fugitive in his destructive mission, ignoring the terrorist nature of his activities.
On Sunday Ade, more popularly called Sunday Igboho, Mr. Malami informs the gathering that his major financier is a federal lawmaker and he has received the sum of 127,145,000 naira from his financiers between October the 22nd, 2013 to September the 28th, 2020.
That Sunday Igboho is a director and signatory to Adhesion International Concept Limited, registered on 23rd April 2010. Adhesion International Concept Limited also has Oladele Oyetunji and Ederovo Adeyemo as directors. Similarly, Igboho is linked to 43 bank accounts in 9 banks.
The minister says information on the country supporting Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB would be made public in due time.
And staying with security, the Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum met with the President today at the State House. Briefing newsmen after the meeting, Governor Zulum announced that the naval base has been returned to Baga. The governor said he informed the President that the Chief of Naval Staff ensured the return of the naval base to Baga last month. He is, however, requesting for additional support to deal with the rising number of ISWAP members operating in the southern and northern part of the state.
On 27th of November, Borno State Government will ensure the resettlement of IDPs that are living in Difa province of Niger to Malumpaturi. Malumpaturi is a local government headquarters in Borno State, but somehow we don't have human population in these local government areas because of the insurgency. I'm pleased to inform you also that the Chief of Naval Staff has ensured the return of naval base to Baga last month. These are some of the reasons why I came to brief Mr. President, and I also requested Mr. President to continue to provide more support in ensuring that the growing number of ISWAP that are operating in the, especially in the southern part and northern part of Borno State, are being handled appropriately.
Meanwhile, in Imo State, the police command says it has successfully repelled an attack by armed bandits suspected to be members of IPOB and ESN terror group. The command in a statement says the bandits, who came in about 5 vehicles and 3 motorcycles, threw petrol bombs on the roof of a building damaged during the NSAS protests and started shooting sporadically. It goes further to say that the police operatives attached to the station returned fire, engaging them in a gun duel. The police were able to repel the bandits, and in the process they zoomed off in their vehicles and motorcycles. According to the police, due to the gallantry of the operatives, no life was lost. One of the police operatives, who sustained a gunshot injury, was rushed to a nearby hospital. And over in Anambra State, the state governor, Willie Obiano, has signed into law the Cattle and Other Livestock Open Grazing Prohibition and Ranches Establishment Law of Anambra State 2021 at the Governor's Lodge, Amobia. Governor Obiano stated that the law will entrench sustainable peace in the state, even though the government's management of the farmers' herders crisis for a long time now has only been a temporary measure.
We're here for His Excellency to do the needful.
This bill that I'm going to sign into law in a few minutes' time will really enable the peace that has eluded us with the herdsmen in a long time to come to fruition. That peace is required at this point. We've been managing crisis for a very long time, and like I kept saying then, there were short-term measures. This is a more permanent solution to that kind of challenge. I'm very confident that as soon as I sign it into law, I'll ask the law enforcement agents to implement it, so that first there will be food in abundance. People have suffered a lot of degradation purely because their produce were eaten by the ravaging cows, and that leads to all kinds of altercations. We will not allow that to continue.
The Edo State government is promising to implement the recommendations of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry on Police Brutality and Related Matters set up last year following the NSAS protests. Governor Godwin Obaseki made this pledge during a meeting with some youths in Benin City, the state capital.
I set up a panel of inquiry, and I want to use this opportunity to thank many of you young people who served on that panel. The panel has done its work and submitted its report at the end, 5 volumes. In summary, about 170 petitions were received. 25 of them were struck out, and 10 were dismissed. The panel recommended compensations to be paid to victims totaling 190 million. And the amount of judgment sums which were recommended to be enforced was 98 million. I have accepted that we will pay compensation.
part 2 after the break. Federal government resumes talks with the Nigeria Medical Association on issues of hazard allowance and other matters bordering on the welfare of doctors. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 26 years after, federal government considers state pardon for Ken Saro-Wiwa and others as Ogoni leaders visit president at the villa. Attorney General of the Federation accuses leader of prescribed IPOB of triggering violence. Also hints on alleged sponsors of Kanu and Yoruba Nation agitator Sunday Igboho. Health crisis looms in Jigawa state with about 500 patients losing their lives to cholera. State government intensifies vaccination drive. And nurses decline to treat police officer shot during Eswatini protests as government bans demonstrations and restricts internet services. The federal government has resumed discussions with the Nigeria Medical Association on the issue of hazard allowance and other labour matters that continue to threaten industrial harmony in the sector. At the opening of the meeting in Abuja, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, said that the federal government is committed to concluding all the issues, but will only sign what it can afford to pay. But the president of the NMA, Professor Innocent Uja, is of the view that the federal government has the ability to meet their demands.
But I want to make an observation.
Again, we want to reiterate the fact with which we started the meeting, that no compensation will be enough for any health worker to equate to him with the hazard that he faces treating patients in pandemics, not only COVID. Like I always say, in CBA, the cardinal principle guiding CBA is ability to pay and the capacity to pay. No government, no employer should say or carry what he cannot afford to pay. Don't enter that agreement. And that is the maxim here.
We are primarily under the Ministry of Health. What we are doing is to try to see how we can navigate. So I don't see the rationale where the Minister of Health has abandoned us in the afternoon. That's the middle of the sea, and I want to say this very seriously. I had said it at other fora, but I want to emphasize that this is not pleasant to Nigerian Medical Association. So we agree with you that this should be the last meeting on this. But we also feel that the desire to pay should be emphasized, because ability is there, capacity is there, but the desire to pay.
Let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Gloria Umezoke. Gloria?
Hello, Joma. Good to see you.
You too.
Well, it's not too cheering news in Jigawa State, where over 500 people have died of cholera infection, just as the government records over 20,000 cases of the disease across the state this year. The Executive Secretary of the Primary Health Care Agency in the state, Dr. Kabir Ibrahim, made this disclosure to newsmen in Dutse, the state capital. According to him, the government is tackling the challenge and has rolled out vaccines for people in 3 of the most affected local government areas.
There are 27 local government areas in Jigawa State, northwest Nigeria, and 22 of them are battling with cases of cholera. Dutse, the state capital, Borno Kudu and Hadeja are the worst hit by the outbreak. Mariam Yakubu lives in Zay in the state capital, and she has lost her mother to the disease. In the last 4 months, Jigawa State has recorded over 20,000 cases of cholera, with about 500 people losing their lives as a result of the infection. Poor personal and environmental hygiene have been identified as the primary causes of the infection. However, authorities have rolled out oral vaccination in order to put a stop to the spread.
We have received about 1,400,000 doses from the Federal Ministry of Health through WHO, and the target population is children, people from the age of 1 to the age of whatever age, 70, 80, 90, 100, whoever lives as to that age group is eligible for this vaccination. And for now, we are targeting 3 LGS, the high-burden LGS of Borno, Kudu, Dutse, and Hadeja. So each recipient is entitled to 2 doses separated by 4 weeks. So we are targeting about 720,000 people for the first dose, and then another 720 for the second dose, which will happen in the next 4 weeks.
The oral vaccine against cholera is free, and children in this school are among the first recipients after getting their parents' consent.
Based on the information I received, is cholera vaccine, and the protocol finally engaged is we do notify their parent and get clearance, approval for their children to be vaccinated in whatever type of even vaccination, be it polio or whatever. So because we don't want any parent to have any doubtful mind in whatever treatment or whatever vaccine their children are taking.
Cholera is an acute diarrheal infection caused by the ingestion of food or water contaminated with the bacterium Vibrio cholerae, and regular hand washing as well as keeping the environment clean are some of the key preventive measures against the disease. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Nigeria could wait for another 40 years to achieve zero carbon emission as against the initial United Nations net zero emission target for the year 2050. The Minister of State for Environment stated this at the 15th meeting of the National Council on Environment in Abuja. According to him, although the federal government is working hard to implement policies that will help mitigate the adverse effects of climate change, it could take the country up until the year 2060 before it achieves the zero carbon emission target.
You will recall that Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. The ministry has been working hard to meet our obligations under this agreement. To this end, we have been able to achieve the following. We now have a revised national policy on climate change, which was approved in June by the Federal Executive Council. Thank you. We have also developed an adaptation document, which would highlight our adaptation efforts to the impacts of climate change. We have also developed a national action plan on gender and climate change. So it's important at this point to reiterate Nigeria's commitment to the Nigeria Energy Transition Plan for a universal access to energy by 2030. Also zero carbon emission by 2050. But this zero carbon emission by 2050 might just be by 2060 for Nigeria as a developing country, and for us also to maintain gas as a transition fuel.
Well, elsewhere, the Katsina State Police Command has arrested 23 suspects in connection with banditry, cattle rustling, kidnapping, armed robbery, and other related crimes. A briefing newsman at the Katsina Police Command headquarters, the police spokesman, Gambo Issa, explains that the suspects were arrested as part of efforts to fight crime and criminality in the state. Among the suspects was a 14-year-old bandit and cattle rustler who confessed to being under the command of one Maliki, a notorious bandits leader, hibernating in the forest. The command has also arrested a notorious syndicate of armed robbers who specialize in impersonating the Nigeria Police Force and the Nigerian Army to rob unsuspecting members of the public. When the News at 10 returns, fourth memorial lecture of the late Justice Anthony Anyagolu holds in Enugu. Plus, Central Bank affirms that the nation's banks remain strong and resilient despite the impact of COVID-19. That's some business news. Do join us again. Welcome back. You're still watching the News at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. Senior legal practitioners have asked lawyers and judges to emulate late Justice Anthony Anyagolu by interpreting laws honestly and faithfully, without bias, affection or ill will, and in the best interest of the country. The experts were speaking at the fourth memorial lecture of the late Justice, themed the 1989 Constitution, a critical analysis and evaluation of its applicability to contemporary discourse on constitutional amendment.
It's the fourth memorial lecture of late Justice Anthony Aniagolu, and family members, respected men of the law profession, students of the Godfrey Okoye University, and others gather to honor him. Guest of honor and Archbishop of Sokoto Diocese, His Lordship Matthew Kuka, tasks legal practitioners on emulating the outstanding qualities of late Justice Aniagolu.
The duty of a good judge, is to administer justice according to the law, without fear or favor, affection or ill will, and without regard to the wishes or policy of the federal, state, or local government. A judge must be one who neither favors the rich nor the poor. Again, Justice Kalia said if a judge ever wished to pursue his own opinion, then he should resign and lead a revolution.
While delivering the keynote lecture, human rights activist and a senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, highlights some of the roles of the late justice in drafting the 1989 Constitution, calling on governors to pursue the interest of the people.
I'm calling on governors today to get the attorneys general to study section 44, subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution, which is in pari material with section 42, subsection 3 of the 1989 Constitution. This is the beginning. This is the origin of that provision, that the resources of our country shall be taken over by the federation, not the federal government.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
A book written by the late Justice Anthony Aniagolu titled The Making of the 1989 Constitution is unveiled and reviewed by Professor Chidi Odinkalu.
The abiding lesson of this book, therefore, missed by a succession of generations of Nigerian rulers even before it was written, and certainly since then, is the urgency of remaking a country that can work for all who live and come from it, and for whoever is involved in that mission. So, you've got to get yourselves to the point where you are also, apologies to Bob Marley, willing to emancipate yourself from mental slavery and from constructed identities.
For family members, there's no better time than now to emulate a man who stood for equity, fairness, and justice.
As he was a great judge, as most people have recognized him to be, a man who stood for justice, who stood for truth, and who had tremendous courage in speaking the truth. It's the kind of thing you don't see today. He was also a good father. I think that when you see how cowardly people act today and how people are turncoats, they say one thing today and it's a different thing tomorrow. People like that, my dad, are people that we should emulate.
The book by late Justice Anthony Aniagolu takes into account his efforts in drafting the bill on the 1989 Constitution and the way forward for Nigeria.
Deploying technology innovation is expected to boost the nation's fight against corruption as well as terrorism. But this is according to the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, who says the federal government is set to make all sectors of the economy technology-driven. Mr. Onu was speaking on the sidelines of the unveiling of the new logo, vision and mission of the ministry in Abuja.
We are committed to using shortcuts in order to catch up with the technologically more developed countries of the world. We intend to use innovation and reverse engineering to ensure that the capital goods market is developed in the nation. This will help us to facilitate industrialization that is not only inclusive, but also irreversible. Hence, technology will now influence virtually all sectors, including agriculture, water resources, transportation, construction, health, education, sports, defense and security, financial management, the fight against corruption, and so on. we will use technology and innovation to provide skills for our young people and help to achieve gender balance in the production sector of our economy.
But that's it from the nation's capital. It's over now to Teniola in Lagos for business news.
Thanks a lot, Gloria. Despite disruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic on economic activities, Nigeria's banking sector remains stable, robust and resilient, and that's the latest reassurance by the central bank. A director at the CBN, Aruna Mustafa, who made this known to journalists in Ibadan, the Oyo state capital, explained that the ratio of non-performing loan in the banking sector improved from 6.58% to 5.9% as at August. He also mentioned that banking system credit to the economy increased to 10.99% between January and August. Meanwhile, the Apex Bank says it would continue to monitor the banks in the country to detect early vulnerabilities to ensure preemptive action, as well as apply some regulatory measures for the growth of the sector. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation says it has liquidated at least 500 deposit money, microfinance and primary mortgage banks whose licenses were revoked by the Central Bank of Nigeria. A statement released by the NDIC mentioned that the corporation had closed 325 MFBs, 50 PMBs and 49 DMBs whose licenses were revoked by the CBN with minimal effects on the stability and confidence in the banking sector. Meanwhile, the NDIC also says it has cumulatively paid 8.27 billion naira to insured depositors of DMBs, 3.38 billion naira to insured depositors of MFBs, and 11 billion to insured depositors of PMBs. The Nigerian Economic Summit Group and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning is set to hold the 27th edition of the NESG Summit next week. The two-day event, which begins on Monday, October the 25th to the 26th in Abuja, will combine virtual and in-person sessions. Issues to be discussed at the summit include the political economy, national security, economic and digital transformation, amongst others. President Muhammadu Buhari, as well as other top government officials from within and outside the country, and stakeholders are expected to attend the summit. Well, the third trading week at the NGX ends in favor of the bull as it maintains the winning streak in 3 out of 4 sessions. Will Ibong has details of today's trading activities.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's the last day of the week and the bullish run continued in the equities market, nurturing its third straight day of positive trading. The all-share index rose moderately higher by 0.14%, inching closer to the 42,000 level, and as some analysts have said, the equities market is trying to recover and reclaim its previous highs. The market is riding today on the back of some big names in the oil and gas, consumer goods and banking sectors. The biggest winner here is the oil and gas index, which rose by 2.48%, thanks largely to Total Energies and O&O. This scale-up is evident in the overall turnover as volume jumped by 135%, valued at 5.87 billion naira. This amount is 73% higher than the total value recorded yesterday. Still top on the gainers leaderboard, QTIX up again today by 20%, while NEM Insurance lagged behind along with 18 other underperformers. The bull definitely takes the win for the week. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Willie Bong. It's back to you.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to Ijeoma for the rest of the news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. Still ahead on the news at 10, nurses decline to treat police officers shot during Eswatini protests as government bans demonstrations and restricts internet services. And we have more international news from our London studio. Do stay with us. Welcome back. An unconfirmed number of people are feared killed following an explosion in an illegal refinery in Rumekwe, Imoha local government area of Rivers State. Those killed are said to be the people operating the illegal refinery. Others are said to have sustained various degrees of injury in the blast. Nurses in Eswatini are refusing to treat police officers as they accuse them of shooting colleagues during a pro-democracy rally. Protests in Africa's last absolute monarchy, formerly known as Swaziland, have swept the country since June. And for more international news, here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A woman has died and a man has been injured after actor Alec Baldwin fired a prop gun on a New Mexico film set for the 19th century western Rust. Halina Hutchins was shot while working on the set as director of photography. She was flown to hospital by helicopter but died of her injuries. The injured man, director Joel Souza, was taken from the scene at Bonanza Creek Ranch by ambulance. A spokesperson for Mr. Baldwin, best known for his role in 30 Rock and for his portrayal of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, said the incident involved the misfiring of a prop gun with blanks. Police said they were investigating and that no charges had been filed. President Joe Biden has said the US would defend Taiwan if China attacked, in an apparent departure from a long-held US foreign policy position. But a White House spokesman later told some US media outlets that his remarks did not signify a change in policy. China has responded by repeating that they wouldn't tolerate any external interference in their domestic policy. At least 16 people have been killed in an explosion and a fire at a gunpowder and chemicals plant in Russia's western Ryazan province. The Emergencies Ministry confirmed 12 deaths in the accident, saying 4 people remained missing. It's been reported that the accident was caused by a failure to observe the proper technical processes at the facility. Human remains found in a Florida park are those of Brian Laundrie, the fiancé of murdered blogger Gabby Petito. That's according to the FBI. The body of Mr. Laundrie, who had been missing for over a month, was identified using dental records. He had been a person of interest in Gabby Petito's death, who went missing while she was on a trip with Mr. Laundrie. Her body was later found in Wyoming, where the couple had been travelling. At least 6 people have been killed in an attack at a Rohingya camp in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar, the latest incident of violence in the world's largest refugee settlement. A gang armed with guns attacked a religious school before dawn and killed 3 teachers, 2 volunteers and a student. The sprawling settlements have become increasingly violent, residents say, with armed gangs vying for power and kidnapping critics. The Ethiopian authorities have confirmed the National Air Force shelled the Tigray regional capital of Mekelle, its 4th strike on the city this week. Thousands of people have been killed by the fighting and more than 2 million displaced. The government says its latest attacks targeted rebels, but fighters in Tigray have claimed civilians were the target. Some human rights activists are suggesting high-rise residential buildings had been bombed, but the military said it was targeting manufacturing sites. New drone footage has been released showing the remarkable power and force of the lava that continues to pour out of the volcano on La Palma Island. Video recorded by a Spanish channel showed streams of lava flowing towards the Atlantic Ocean. The volcano is now in its 2nd month of eruption. So far, around 2,000 buildings have been destroyed and around 7,500 people have been forced to evacuate. The Queen is now back at Windsor Castle after spending the night in hospital for preliminary medical checks. The 95-year-old monarch returned from the private hospital in central London and is in good spirits, according to the palace. The Queen had cancelled a visit to Northern Ireland on Wednesday. She was given medical advice to rest for a few days after a busy schedule of public engagements. And finally, flight attendants in Italy have stripped off their uniforms in a flash mob to protest against job losses and pay cuts. standing in front of Rome's town hall, around 50 female workers slowly removed their uniforms in silence to demonstrate against the working conditions of their colleagues rehired by Italy's new airline company, ITA Airways. The Italian government is due to invest 1.35 billion euros over 3 years in the new company, which bought Alitalia's iconic brand for 90 million euros. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Welcome to Sports News. 2022 World Cup hosts Qatar have completed another stadium ahead of the tournament. The 40,000 capacity Al Thumama was showcased to the world today when Al Saad took on Al Rayyan in the Emir Cup. The Gulf state has built or upgraded 8 stadiums ahead of the tournament. Now, Arsenal returned to winning ways with the English Premier League with a well-deserved 3-1 victory over Aston Villa at the Emirates Stadium. Thomas Partey, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Emil Smith-Rowe were all on the score sheet as Mikel Arteta's men secured all 3 points with a superb display. With this win, the Gunners move into the top half of the Premier League table. Meanwhile, Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel is facing a forward crisis at Stamford Bridge after both Romelu Lukaku and Timo Werner were ruled out of his side's Premier League clash with Norwich City. The two strikers were taken off during the midweek Champions League fixture against Malmo and have now been ruled out of Chelsea's next 2 games. Lukaku has suffered an ankle issue with Werner and both bothered by a hamstring injury, leaving the team with no senior team striker to deputise for the pair. Staying with football, Pep Guardiola believes football managers are treated worse than the Western society amid a culture of online abuse. The Spaniard, who is against the notion that one man is to be blamed for every setback, urged former Newcastle manager Steve Bruce to ignore the online insults from strangers and remember the praise from those who truly love him. And that'll be all in sports news.
Thanks, Kayode. And the main news again. The federal government today said it's considering state pardon for the late environmental activist and writer Ken Saro-Wiwa and other members of the Ogoni Nine who were killed during the General Sani Abacha regime in 1995. The president promised this when some Ogoni leaders visited him at the villa. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Nyato. Do have a great weekend. Stay safe. Good night.